Welcome back to the Sounds Like Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Deborah Henne, and I'm here today with Guy Gane Jr., who was a nationally known stockbroker and registered investment advisor. And he's also a former federal inmate who, despite vehemently proclaiming his innocence as well as passing multiple polygraph tests, was still sentenced to a 13-year prison term. He has since published three books: Unchained and Unbroken, Life Lessons and Strength Training from a Jailhouse Gym Rat, Managed Monkey and Avenue to Wealth, and Chrysalis, Awakening to God's Path, Protection, and Power in Your Life. And those are all available on Amazon and other bookstores. But because of his own prison experience, Guy created the organization Prisoncology, partnering with the Christian community nationwide. Prisoncology is at the forefront of prison reform in the United States. In addition to being an author, Guy is a performance coach who mentors a limited number of clients through his one-on-one coaching technique. Through his guidance, Guy changes lives where clients achieve their highest expectations. He also publishes a weekly subscription-based stock market update and is an in-demand public speaker as well. Welcome, Guy.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a mouthful. Thank you.
It is. So you have a lot going. So you
Yeah.
have the stock and investment market watch update that you do weekly. You
Right.
also have Prisoncology.
Hmm.
But I'd like to start off with telling a little bit more about your story, which was hinted at in your bio.
Okay. Um, it's a very, very long story, and I try to condense it to some degree because it's just, it's like I think people after a while maybe say, "Oh, okay, I had enough." But let me just tell you, and kind of give you a thumbnail. As you mentioned here at the top of the show, I was a stockbroker for many, many years. I was in the financial industry for 34 years, and about halfway through my career, I decided to become a registered investment advisor. And the reason I did that is that most stockbrokers charge their clients a commission to deal with them. And what I decided to go out on my own. I formed my own company. And I just decided to try to take a different path. Instead of having people pay commissions, what I was doing is actively managing their money on a daily basis. And in order to do that, I just charged a yearly fee. And the fee that I charged was based on the dollar amount, certainly that they wanted me to manage. But I always had to make money for them year after year because if I didn't, I continued to manage their money for free until I did. And I had clients that had a couple $1,000s with me. I had clients with well over $10 million with me and everything really in between. What had happened, my business model had a change in 2005 because in 2003, the government changed some regulations. What had happened is there was some malfeasance that had gone on in the brokerage business, really in the investment business, not really the brokerage business. But what had happened is it was discovered that a lot of the big mutual fund companies, the families, were allowing registered advisors like myself who had billions of dollars under management. I just had millions. But what they were doing is they were trading after hours. And the Asian markets open up at 6 o'clock, 6 p.m. And some of these funds were allowing advisors to trade their investments up until 8 o'clock, which really gave the investor, just the average investor, as well as people like me, a very unfair situation because they were taking advantage of what the rest of us were not able to do. Anyway, by 2005, the regulations started being put in place. And instead of having an active management where people could go back and forth within their funds, and I was managing, again, millions and millions of dollars, I couldn't do that anymore. And because these fund companies now, because of everything that had gone on, these fund companies put a cap on how many times you could move the money within a year. Now, I was doing when I was actively working as an advisor, I was moving anywhere from 70 to 90 times a year on average. And it just happened to work that way. And my whole philosophy, which is still my philosophy, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but is to prevent big losses by taking small losses. And, some people say, well, just hang on. And most brokers will tell their clients, even when the market's going down, hang on, it'll come back. And it does. The problem is that if you've lost 20%, you've got to make up almost 30% just to make up what you lost. So, when that happens, it takes a long time for that money to go back to become even. Anyway, the thing is that when I started a new company, it was to develop a real estate investment trust. And as we were putting everything together, and again, this is a longer story and I'm condensing it, but as we were putting this company together, I didn't want to let my employees go. I had multiple offices throughout the country, primarily on the East Coast. But the thing is that I did not want to let people go because I couldn't do my business anymore. And I had brokers that worked with me, administration staff that worked with me. I had, so many things in place that a lot of people depended on me for their livelihoods. So what we decided to do, I brought two partners on, and we decided to start a real estate investment trust. But as we were building that, we were taking money in, investors' money in to our company, so I could continue to pay people their salary. And the investors knew about that. These were primarily people that had been working with us for a long time, so they really knew who we were and could trust us. What I found out is that, unfortunately, way too late, that a couple of my brokers had been lying to our clients, our investors, and when they got caught, they said that I told them to do that I instructed them to do that, to lie, and of course the local media really built that up. They got a lot of the information from the government, and you can't really, when you're under investigation, you really can't say much because, as they say, what you say can and will be used against you. Anyway, what happened is when the government came into my offices, I was stunned because I had no idea what was going on. And the next day, I told my employees, they said, well, we're obviously under investigation. Whatever you do, just tell the truth. I mean, we have nothing to hide. Well, little did I know, because I did not know at this point what was going on. It wasn't until about a month and a half later that I did find out. And then shortly after that, I became a target because of what these people had said. And as you said, I passed a couple of polygraph tests. And it wasn't just one. I mean, it was the traditional polygraph test, and it was also the voice stress analysis. And both of them verified that, I, in fact, had been telling the truth. But in any event, I was the boss. And had the government said to me, look, Mr. Gane, you're the captain of the ship. And like any captain of a ship, there's a problem on board. It's his responsibility, not the sailors. Had they done that, I would have pled right away because I couldn't deny that. It was true. But they decided to get creative and put the word out that I was lying to investors, I was stealing their money, that I was going after elderly people. I mean, they really colored it up. But, God works in funny ways. And sometimes what's meant for bad ends up becoming good. I ended up with a 13-year prison sentence, as I said, or as you mentioned. And I actually served 9 years. There was some change in some of the laws a few years back, and I was let out early because, good behavior and all of that. Normally in the federal system, you do 85% of your time. There's no parole or anything like that. There are in a lot of the states, but the feds don't do it that way. You have to serve 85% of their time. What had happened is because this law had changed, people like me had had to do 66% of the time, and I had to do the rest of the time at home. By a miracle, I, even with that, got let off early. It was a God thing, really, that, I got a call from my case managers and told me, Mr. Gane, you're all done. And I was done. So I've been out of prison for 4 years. I'm fine and can travel, all of those things. So I'm under no restrictions or anything anymore, no supervision. But, what I've done is I really tried to take the bitterness that I had originally had and try to turn that into good. And as you mentioned, I formed an organization called Prisoncology because of people like me that had no idea what was going on, especially when you're white collar. Most white collar offenders either got over sentenced, in my opinion, and being in prison for as long as I was, I got to meet a lot of different people. But, when you're a white collar person, you never really have this on your agenda that whatever you're doing, you're going to go to prison. And if you're a drug person, if you're a bank robber, organized crime, that's part of the deal. You are sacrificing your freedom or your life in some cases for a quick buck. Most white collar guys are not like that. And I had teachers in there with me that, there was one particular teacher was a state senator down in Virginia. And he got caught up in something that had nothing to do with him. But in any event, we won't get into all of those stories, at least today. But the thing is that when I walked into prison, I was scared. I was serving time with rapists, with murderers, with bank robbers, with drug lords. I mean, it was really, really bad. And for someone like me who had, for want of a better word, lived a sheltered life, it was traumatic. And that first night was horrible. And I don't care how tough anybody is. There's always that first night, and it's very, very difficult to put up with. But as the years went on, I decided to put the time to some type of use to help others. But as we spoke about with Prisoncology, just before I left, actually about 6-8 months before I left, I decided to put together a course for people and their families, people that were going to go to prison and their families as well, to try to navigate to some degree what to expect when you come into prison. And what we did, we put together a board of advisors, which we have. And before I had gone to prison, I was so desperate to stay out, and I kept thinking, this can't happen, this can't happen. And some of them had told me about a prison consultant. And I didn't have any money because the government had frozen all of my money, which I tried a few times to go to court and at least let them give me the money so I could get an attorney, a paid attorney. They wouldn't do it. So I ended up with a federal public defender. And anyway, when I heard about this prison consultant, I talked to him, and he told me, "Oh, I can do this and I can do that, and he'd probably keep you out of prison." And it was just that type of talk. Well, he wanted $5,000, and to be honest with you, Debbie, $5,000 at that time could have been 5 million. We had nothing, and my family, my extended family, put the money together, and we gave it to the guy. And I was so excited. I thought, "Oh, thank you, Father. There's some hope here." Well, a couple of weeks went by, and I hadn't heard anything from him. So I called him up and I said, "Hey, when are we going to get going?" "Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put together a letter campaign, and I want you to have anybody that wants to send a recommendation letter for you or a letter of support. I'm going to coordinate that, and we'll get it to the judge." I said, "Well, I've already done that. What else are we going to do? The judge already has those letters." "Well, Mr. Gane, that's about it. That's about all I can do. You're dealing with the federal government." I said, "Wait a minute. You told me, this, and this." "Well, now we can't. That's about all we can do." Well, I was married at the time, and my wife was livid because, again, $5,000 was a tremendous amount of money. So she called him up, and she said, "Look, you didn't do anything that you said that you would do, and so on. We want our money back." "I'm sorry. I don't give refunds." So this guy took advantage of someone in the family that were desperate and wouldn't even give the money back. He didn't do what he said he would do. That really bothered me while I was away. And, I talked to other people other guys that were in prison that had also gone to a prison consultant. And what had happened is kind of the same thing. And I started, when I got home, I really started looking into this even more. I mean, I put together this course, but I didn't know exactly how I was going to present that to the public. And as I looked, I see all of these prison consultants. And I've had, as you can imagine, with our site and everything, I've had people reach out to me and say, "Mr. Gane, what can I do?" And so on. We don't charge anybody. So if we have a family or an individual that comes to us and asks us for help, we do not charge. Our money comes from the Christian community. So unlike, me who didn't have any money, I shouldn't say unlike, just like me, I should say, people that did not have any money, we don't want to take advantage of anybody. So what we do is we have an ebook, over 100-page ebook that we send out. Excuse me. Pardon me. So what happens is the families can contact us. We'll walk through everything with them. Excuse me one second. I don't know where that came from. Um, the families can contact us, and we'll walk through everything with them from the day that the person walks through that door, on everything that goes on there while they're there until the day that they walk out. We cover that with them, and we try to help the families. We help them to navigate and so on. And I strongly urge anybody that's listening today, and I really, really encourage this. If you're thinking about, if you happen to be someone that is in trouble, or maybe you have a loved one or people that you know that might be in trouble, I strongly encourage you to at least look us up. We're at prisoncology.com, because the thing is that these prison consultants out there are, in my opinion, I'm not naming names, but in my opinion, are just there bleeding people. I don't think it's right what they're doing. And we're not in that position where we're going to take advantage of people. It's not that we don't want to. We don't want to, but we don't. So the thing is that when I see some of this paperwork that some of the people that have sent to me that had worked with prison consultants, or these prison consultants are asking for their business, when I look at this, I think this is shameful. It really is, because you can't, when you're in that position like I was, you're so scared and you're just grabbing at any type of straw that you can, because you think you're going to get help. And to get taken advantage of people that really are broke like I was. I mean, in my career, I made an awful lot of money. I was very, very blessed. But to have that all taken away and then getting taken advantage of on top of it, well, anyway, we just make sure that that doesn't happen. So again, I encourage people, if they know anybody, if they happen to be in that position, whatever, I really strongly encourage you to take a look at our site and see if we're, some folks that you'd like to talk with.
Yeah, and it's great that there's somebody like you, willing to educate the public, provide resources
Mhm.
so other people don't fall into the deceptive trap like that.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking to hear. Um, but I want to go back, to the beginning of your story. You talk about you're taking these polygraph tests, you're stunned, and you said, and I love that you said it, that God can work all things for the good, because that is a promise in scripture. But
Right.
as somebody listening to your story, as you're looking forward into it, I can't even imagine going through that. I can't imagine being hooked up to polygraph tests and being sentenced to a prison sentence that I really am innocent for.
Mhm.
And yet you can stand here and say God works all things for the good. So can you talk to that for the audience, to say, you know what, even if you are hit with the really unexpected, even if you are, in the worst case scenario here,
Mhm.
really a worst case scenario for your life, how can you stand in that promise? Do you have any strategies that you can share with our audience
Yeah.
today?
Yeah. I think for me, I can only use myself as an example. I think you have to get back to God. You know, I think if you talk to a lot of people that they do believe in something, I don't care what religion you are, you believe that there's a higher power. Being a Christian, I think for me, I've always considered myself a good Christian. It wasn't until I was really in trouble that, man, I tried to hold on to that rock. But when I say you have to kind of talk to God, the first night that I went to prison, I swore. I remember that night. I put my shirt over my face as I was laying on my rack, and I was sleeping on a steel bunk. By the way, that's what prison is like. And I laid there. It was about 11:30 at night, and I was crying, but I got to be macho. I can't let the other guys, see me or hear me crying. So I'm holding whatever I can in, and tears coming down my face as I'm laying on the bed. And I looked up to the ceiling, and I still remember this. I looked up to the ceiling, and there are all the pipes and everything that you see. And I said, "How could you possibly let me go to prison? You know the truth. If no one else in this universe knows the truth, you know the truth." And see, what I didn't mention, Debbie, is I had actually had a heart attack and had died. And they brought me back with the paddles. And this had happened a few years before, after everything had happened. And I kept putting the chest pains off to stress, and I was a lot heavier back then as well, so I was putting it off to that. And, I didn't pay attention. And finally, one morning, I got up at 3:30 in the morning and was having a massive heart attack. Got to the hospital, and I finally had fallen asleep there. And the nurse was putting the oxygen mask over my face and woke me up. I was mad that she did because I finally had fallen asleep. And she said something like, "Welcome back." I said, "What?" She said, "We lost you. We brought you back with the paddles." And I thought, "Wow, I didn't know that." So that first night, I swear, God. I mean, if anybody has seen the movie Forrest Gump, when Lieutenant Dan is up on the mast at the boat and he's swearing, he's screaming, and that's kind of what I did. And a few days later, again, that being my first night, a few days later, I had to go to medical because you go through all of these different departments as they examine you and so on. And the doctor, it was an older man, said to me, because I had my medical record sent to the prison. He said, "Mr. Gane," he said, "I see that you had a heart attack." I said, "Yeah, I did." He said, "I'm a cardiologist." He said, "I retired." He said, "I do some contract work now and then for the government." He said, but I see that they use the defibrillators on you." I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Everybody thinks that those work all the time." He said, "They work less than 2% of the time." And I'll never forget what he said, Debbie. He said, "God has a special plan for you." I said, yeah, I got 13 years. He said, no. He said, "God has got a special plan for you." I don't want to get emotional because I do think about, all of these things are like happened yesterday. But it wasn't that I tried to live up to that, but I never forgot that, and I thought, well, I've got to move on. I mean, I'm not going to do anything crazy, although I had thought about it. But as time went on, to answer your question, I put my faith in God. I really did. I said, "There's got to be a reason for this." You know that I'm innocent, and there's an urban legend that I think your listeners, I'm sure, are aware of, and that's that all of the guys that go to prison, everybody is innocent. It was the lawyer that messed them up. They didn't do anything. That's not true. I can tell you now that everyone that I spoke with had told me that did tell me their story. And I always suggest to people, when you go to prison, keep your business to yourself. But the thing is that no one that I had spoken with had ever said, "Oh, I didn't do it." I mean, the people, and you can tell, Debbie, when you're with people. Our parents used to tell us that you're judged by the company you keep and how you behave. So you could kind of tell the guys that were either over sentenced or in fact innocent. And by the way, when we speak about innocence, the government statistics itself says 3 to 5% of the people that are in prison are in fact innocent. There are reports out there, which I think the other reports are probably more accurate, that is between 15 to 20% of the people that are prison are innocent. But the fact is that I allowed myself, and I'm answering your question this way, I allowed myself to be taken advantage of. And as we talked about before we started the show, I also do business consulting. So what I've done is I've taken the experiences that I had, the trust that I used to put into people, which is not God's way. I mean, I remember Ronald Reagan many years ago saying, "Trust but verify." What I did is I had so many people that worked for me. I had an in-house attorney. I had compliance people. I had all of these people to make sure that there was never going to be a problem. And I didn't check them. I didn't double check them. I'm not blaming anybody. That was my fault. But the thing is that what I would say is that when you place your trust in someone, there's only one place to put your trust. And I know this might sound hokey to some, but that's God. Place your trust in God. Because for me, I had to devote myself to his will. It wasn't my will. Believe me, I did not want to be there. But the thing is I thought there's got to be a purpose for all of this. And what I wanted to do is, first of all, the first agenda that I had is to forgive everybody. Forgive those that lied about me. Forgive the prosecutors. Forgive all of these people because, forgiveness is one of these things that people say, well, they don't deserve forgiveness. Well, you know what? It's not them that you're doing that for. It's us. Because when you don't forgive someone, and I'm not saying it's easy to do because it's not, especially if you've really been hurt by it. But the thing is, you're doing it for yourself. And those that are Christians know the prayer, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses in the same way that we forgive others. So if I'm praying that prayer and I'm believing it, and I do believe that, how can I not forgive someone else? The thing is that I think our whole lives are dedicated to growth and education and learning. And how selfish would it be not to pass that on to other people? And that's kind of where I was coming from. So, in order to overcome my hurt, if you will, I felt that by helping other people, I became a mentor. I became an instructor in the prisons. I was also a piano, and not also was. I am a piano player, and I became the music minister for our church in all the prisons that I was in. I was at 4 different prisons during my time, and I actually got to ride on Con Air, which was not a badge of honor by any stretch. But if anybody ever seen that movie, Con Air, is nothing like that, by the way. Anyway, but I really took whatever I had, whether it was my public speaking, because I used to do a lot of that back then before everything happened, as well as now. But I took that talent of public speaking, my talent of playing the piano, uh, my education, and my experiences to try and help someone else while I was in prison, and it gave me a sense of fulfillment. And I tried to behave in a way that, if people looked at me, that they wouldn't say, well, there's another hypocrite Christian, because unfortunately, there's a lot of those folks that are there. And, there's the alleluias and amens and, all of that. And then they're all involved in other garbage that they shouldn't be involved in. So people looked at me, and I think they look at all Christians actually in prison with a little bit of a jaundice, let's see if they really mean that. And before I left the first place that I was at for 2 years. One of the nicest compliments, I should say, that I've ever received in my life. I was saying goodbye to some of the different people that I had become friendly with there. One was an elderly Jewish man, and I would never see him again. But I talked for a minute, and he said, Guy, he said, I've been here a long time, and I'm going to be here a lot longer. He said, in all the time that I've been here, you were the only person that I would ever say was a true Christian. And it blew me away because I didn't do anything, certainly, to go out of my way to do that. And I don't repeat the story from ego. I'm not. I'm just saying that people watch us. There's a hymn that let us be judged by how we act. And that's so true. And I think when you're a Christian, you are called to a higher purpose. You are not maybe for ourselves, but to serve others. And I think, especially in times like this that we've experienced with the selection and all of the things that have gone on over the past few years, I think it's important to realize that we have to take care of ourselves first. Make sure that your own house is in order before you start pointing fingers and so on. And I think we have to realize that let God judge, let God take care of it, because it all comes out in the wash. Everything comes out at the end. And his ways are beyond our ways. So for me, I had people say, oh, you're just like Joseph. You were going to prison for 13 years, and you turned this and that. I don't consider myself anything other than Guy Gane. And by the way, even though my last name is Gane, I'm actually Italian. Our family name is Iovanishi. My mom was born there, but my dad was born here, but all 4 of my grandparents were from Italy. But the thing is that I have to be who I am. And I feel that by talking with people like yourself and having that blessing of being able to talk to other people through you, if I can help even one person of all the people that I've spoken with, if I can help just one person, I will have felt that my job on this earth was done.
Absolutely. Yeah, so that forgiveness piece for sure, for freedom in your own heart, that hope and trust in God's goodness and
Hmm.
faithfulness that kept you in peace. And then looking to serve, just taking what you have, where you're at, even if it was somewhere totally unexpected, and that the world would look at and be like, wow, that's really not a good place to be, but
No,
saying, what? This is where I am, and I can serve God here,
right?
taking what you have, where you're at, and serving the Lord. And what a glory to God. And now you have a story and a testimony to share that can bring inspiration and hope to others as well. So let me put up your website here. You have gainwisdom.com. What can people expect to find when they go to your website?
Actually, a lot. There's a lot of information there, and as you mentioned at the top of the show, I've got a couple of different businesses that I'm involved with. They're all through there that people can access those companies through gainwisdom.com. I think that it's really important too that people. I know you mentioned this before, and people would say this to me. I couldn't do this. I could never go through that. You'd be surprised what you can do when you have to. And I remember speaking with my brother-in-law many, many, many years ago and said, "Oh my God, I can't believe they did. What if he went to prison?" I'm talking back in the 80s. What if somebody went to prison? I could never do that. I'd kill myself. I do this, I do that. But you know what? Somehow you get the strength. I'm not going to say it's easy. But nothing in life today is really easy. And what there's an old saying, as we all know, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And old sayings don't become old sayings because they're not true. They hang around because they are true, and that's that. In that particular one, it certainly is. What happens is that so many people are successful, and you don't learn much from success. Maybe you can emulate that and continue that successful pattern, but you really get the life lessons, the wisdom, if you will, from adversity, from reversals. And as I always say to people, you've got to use that setback as a setup to do greater things, because now you're a little bit smarter than you were before. You know what not to do. I talked about my trust factor, which was over the top. It really was. I just, I was an approval addict. And that was very difficult for me to admit to. I mean, I remember when I read that, but actually Joyce Myers had written a book about this, and I read that while I was in prison, and I was getting red. I actually was getting embarrassed reading this to myself, thinking, "Oh my God, this sounds just like me." And the more I thought about myself over the time that I was there, the more I had come to realize that, yeah, I mean, I needed everybody's approval, to the point where it became detrimental, not only to me, but certainly to the people that invested money with us. And it was ironic because the day that the government came in, a lot of people don't know this, but the day that the government came in was the day that everybody was going to get their money back. Because I had been working for over a year to put the permanent funding together for our company, and I had it. And of course, the government never told anybody that, which I think is the reason that they came in the day that they did. Somehow they found out. But in any event, the thing is that people have asked me as well, "Do you think the government was wrong, to come after me or to look at me?" And I said, "Absolutely not." Because once I found out what was going on, which again was way too late, the government would have been remiss had they not done that. So the government was right, 100% right. And had they said to me, "Look, Gane, again, as I mentioned earlier, this is your company." And even though I had two business partners, I mean, I was really the boss. And, they would have said, "This is your responsibility." How could I deny that? They were right. But the thing that really hurt was the great reputation that I had built up over so many years in the community, all over the US, actually, all came crashing down within a couple of hours because I was not able to get my side of the story. And as I say, to people, and I've written about this, that Senator James Webb, who was a United States Senator out of Virginia, had once said, and I've got to paraphrase because I don't know the exact quote, but either we have an awful lot of criminals in the United States, and we're made up of criminals in the United States because our prison systems are over, just crazy, or we're doing something very wrong in this country. And the thing is that for me, having my reputation ruined at that point really was hurtful, because had they said again he was responsible, but they had to paint that I instructed my employees, I lied to them, I was going after old people to steal their money. I mean, those are things I would never do and have never done. And again, I go back to that first night in prison when I was screaming at God, "The truth. I never did any of these things. Why am I here? I was dead. You had me." But again, what we needed to do, what I needed to do specifically and personally, is to put my big boy pants on and say, you know what, this is what it is. You better do something. So at the time I was there, I wrote the two books. I wrote Chrysalis, and I wrote Unchained and Unbroken. And when I came home, what I did is I wrote Manage Money and Avenue to Wealth, because even though I'm not in the securities business any longer, the government took my license from me. Um, they didn't take my knowledge, and so now I write about it and I help people, and really try to again make somebody's path a little bit easier.
Awesome. So go to his website, gainwisdom.com. It's a central hub for all the things that he does. He has the Prisonecology, he has books, he has Market Watch and business consulting. Thank you so much for joining me today,
Thank
Guy. It was
you.
just such a pleasure and such an inspiration. And don't forget to swipe, tap, or click over to deborahhenne.com. Follow me on social on the X, Instagram, or Facebook at Deborah Henne Author. And let's not forget to tune into our thoughts to make sure they sound like Jesus's, so they sound like freedom.